The wedding invitation arrived on a Monday morning, its gold-embossed lettering still reeking of pretension. I checked "will attend," but my reply card wasn't just going back to the caterer. It would trigger a chain reaction of legal filings, bank investigations, and video evidence that Karen Whitaker never imagined would play at her own daughter's reception. She thought last night's inspection punch would silence me. She didn't know every bruise already had a case number, timestamp, and witness. And when the band struck up the first dance, the DJ's iPad would broadcast the only sound Karen couldn't stand: the truth. My name is Laura Bennett. I've spent 32 years learning that silence is just another word for complicity in HOA tyranny. The invitation had arrived that morning, tucked between utility bills and the latest HOA fine notice for my non-compliant mulch color. Karen Whitaker and future son-in-law request the honor of your presence at the wedding reception of Brittany Whitaker. I'd laughed at the audacity. The HOA president was throwing a lavish wedding for her daughter right in our Pinewood Estates community clubhouse, and somehow I was invited. The event would be held at the very clubhouse she'd forced us to fund with a special assessment last month. Because nothing says community spirit like exposed brick, fairy lights, and embezzled dues. I set the invitation on my kitchen counter right next to the special assessment waiver she'd shoved at me 3 nights ago. Just a signature: Laura, for the good of the neighborhood. The papers were for an emergency loan to cover the unforeseen catering costs for her daughter's big day. $60,000 with my name as cosigner, my credit score as collateral, my future on the line for her next power trip. I can't do it, Karen, I told her, standing in my driveway while her golf cart idled like a throne on wheels. I've got my own bills, my own life. That's when she'd grabbed the heavy HOA rule book. My shoulder still throbbed where the binder had connected. The joint knocked out of alignment when I hit the garage door. My phone, my work phone issued by Copperline DataWorks, lay in pieces on the concrete, its screen a spiderweb of cracks. And her husband Derek had stood there in his golf shirt, arms crossed, and said the words that finally severed whatever neighborly thread still connected us. You brought this on yourself. 32 years old, systems operations specialist, independent for a decade, and somehow I'd brought on being assaulted in my own driveway for refusing to enable her financial fraud. I drove to the ER that night with one hand, the other cradling my injured shoulder. The wait at Pinewood Memorial stretched 3 hours, long enough to watch the bruise bloom from red to purple to that particular shade of yellow-green that photographers love to document. The triage nurse took one look and handed me a domestic violence packet along with my intake forms. I don't live with her, I said. Doesn't matter, she replied. Violence is violence. The x-rays showed no fracture, just soft tissue damage. The doctor prescribed muscle relaxants and rest. The social worker offered resources, shelters, hotlines, legal aid. I took every pamphlet, every business card. Information was ammunition, and I was ready to arm myself. While waiting for discharge, I'd used the hospital's Wi-Fi to log into my WorkCloud account. Copperline DataWorks ran 24/7 operations, which meant every badge swipe, every system login, every help desk ticket was timestamped and geotagged. I pulled my activity logs for the past month, creating a digital trail that proved where I'd been and when. The GPS data from the company car I drove showed my routes between home, office, and client sites. No detours to Karen's mansion, no suspicious gaps, no pattern of provocation that she might try to claim. The police report was filed at 2:47 a.m. Officer Ramirez took photographs of my shoulder, my destroyed phone, the HOA rulebook residue on my jacket. He bagged the jacket as evidence, sealing it with red tape, and a case number I memorized, 2024 to 115,847. Pressing charges? He asked. Yes. He nodded, unsurprised. Protective order? Yes. Smart. You'll need to appear before a judge, probably within 48 hours. Keep copies of everything. Paper trail? I almost smiled. I was a systems specialist. I didn't build paper trails. I built data fortresses. Back in my apartment, I spread everything across my dining table. The ER discharge papers, the police report, the waiver documents Karen had left behind in her rage, and their, in elegant calligraphy that must have cost extra, the wedding invitation. Save the date. October 15th, 6 weeks away. I picked up the RSVP card, running my thumb across the embossed text. Will attend. Will not attend. Please indicate any dietary restrictions. An idea began to form, crystallizing like code compiling in my mind. Karen thought she'd won with violence. She thought a broken phone and a bruised shoulder would make me disappear, would make me compliant. She thought I was still that scared new homeowner who'd hidden behind her curtains while her golf cart patrolled for violations. She was wrong. I checked will attend with my left hand. My right shoulder still screamed in protest. But I didn't mail it. Not yet. Because this RSVP card wasn't just accepting an invitation. It was accepting a challenge. And I had 6 weeks to make sure that when I walked into that clubhouse reception, I wouldn't be arriving as a guest. I'd be arriving as her reckoning. The next morning, I called my brother Evan in Ann Arbor. Different fathers, same mother, same survival instinct. She hit you? Evan's voice was tight, controlled. Derek just watched. He said, "You brought this on yourself." Silence. "Then what do you need?" "Time, information, and maybe a ride to some appointments. My car's at the apartment, but driving with the shoulder I'll be there in 2 hours." While I waited, I made lists, bank accounts to check, credit reports to pull, security footage to request from the HOA common areas. I needed to transform from victim to investigator, from target to hunter. The wedding invitation sat on my coffee table like a promise. Its golden letters catching the morning light. October 15th. 6 weeks to build a case that would destroy Karen Whitaker, not with violence, but with something far more devastating. The truth, documented and delivered in front of everyone who'd ever believed her lies. In the space marked dietary restrictions, I wrote in small, careful letters, "No bullshit." It was a start. The emergency room bracelet was still on my wrist when I walked into the Pinewood Police Department's 3rd District Station. Officer Ramirez had said to come by for copies of the report, but I had bigger plans. I needed to build a fortress of documentation that would make any future, he said. She said, impossible. Assault Report 2024 to 115,847. I told the desk sergeant I'd like to add supplemental evidence. She pulled up the file, eyebrows rising slightly at what was already there. "You're thorough. I work in data systems. Documentation is my religion." Over the next hour, I provided everything. Screenshots of Karen's threatening emails from the past 6 months. "You owe this community. Don't make me come over there. Your neighbors are complaining because of you." Bank statements showing my stable income versus her string of community projects that always benefited her daughter's wedding planner. The waiver documents she tried to force me to sign, now safely sealed in evidence bags. "This is good," the detective assigned to my case said. A middle-aged woman named Torres who looked like she'd seen too much, but still cared enough to do the job right. "But I need you to understand domestic violence cases involving HOA disputes can be complicated. Defense attorneys love to paint them as neighbor disputes. Which is why I need everything airtight." I shifted, wincing as my shoulder protested. "Can I request copies of any previous police calls to my address?" Torres typed something into her computer. 3 calls in the last 2 years. Noise complaints from neighbors. No arrests. No reports filed. She looked at me over her reading glasses. "But that pattern helps establish history. I'll include them. From the police station, Evan drove me to Med Express for follow-up documentation. Every bruise photographed again. Measurements taken. Range of motion recorded. The clinical precision of it. Anterior deltoid contusion. 12 centimeters by 8 centimeters. Purple-green coloration consistent with 36-48-hour-old trauma. Transformed my pain into evidence. You're building a case. The nurse practitioner said, not really a question. I'm building a wall. I corrected. One document at a time. My apartment complex, technically HOA common property but with its own security cameras, had footage of the driveway incident. The property manager, Janet, knew me from 3 years of on-time dues and polite small talk. I need footage from Sunday night, I said, specifically between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. She hesitated. That requires a formal request. I have a police report number. I slid the paper across her desk and a protective order application pending. Her expression softened. Give me an hour. I'll burn it to a disk. While waiting, I sat in my car with Evan, laptop balanced on my knees, connected to my phone's hotspot. My work account at Copperline DataWorks had multiple backup systems, each with its own timestamp protocol. Look at this. I showed Evan the help desk logs. Every ticket I handled Sunday shows my IP address. Office network until 6 p.m. Then my home router from 6:47 p.m. onward. No gaps. No trips to Karen's mansion until she called at 10:23 p.m. Why does that matter? Because Karen's gonna claim I came looking for a fight, that I was drunk or angry or trying to extort money from the HOA. I pulled up the GPS tracking from my company vehicle. But here's my car sitting in my apartment parking lot from 6:51 p.m. until 10:32 p.m. when I drove to the clubhouse to drop off a complaint letter. 12-minute drive. Arrival at 10:44 p.m. The assault happened at approximately 10:55 p.m. Evan whistled low. You've got her cornered with data. Not yet. This is just establishing the timeline. I need more. The security footage was gold. Crystal clear video of me leaving my apartment at 10:32 p.m., walking normally, no signs of intoxication or aggression, then returning at 12:47 a.m., holding my right arm against my body, moving slowly, face turned away from the camera but body language screaming distress. I made 6 copies of everything. 1 for the police, 1 for the prosecutor's office, 1 for my lawyer once I hired one, 1 for the bank. More on that later. 1 for my personal safe and 1 for Evan to hold. Redundancy was security. The domestic violence shelter wasn't what I expected, hidden behind an unmarked office building. The Safe Harbor Adult Protection Center looked like any other professional space until you got past the secured entrance. I don't need emergency housing, I explained to the intake counselor, a woman named Maria who had the kind eyes of someone who'd heard every possible story. But Officer Torres said you could help with safety planning and legal resources. Maria nodded. Smart officer. Let's talk about your situation. For the next 2 hours, I learned more about preserving evidence than I'd ever wanted to know. How to create encrypted backups of digital threats. How to document injuries over time as bruises changed color. How to request emergency health records before they were archived. How to file for a protective order with maximum chances of approval. You're very organized, Maria observed, watching me take notes in my phone. That's good. But I want to make sure you understand documentation is just one part of safety. What's your plan for physical security? We discussed changing locks already done, varying routines in progress, and establishing check-in protocols with trusted friends. She gave me a small device that looked like a key fob but was actually a GPS panic button. Press it 3 times fast, and it alerts both 911 and our crisis team with your location. I clipped it next to my actual car keys. Another layer of protection. Another piece of the fortress. That evening in my apartment with new deadbolts and a chair wedged under the door handle, I finally opened my laptop to check my credit report. What I found there made my injured shoulder seem like a paper cut in comparison. Evan, I called him immediately. I need you to see this. 3 months ago, while I was working a system migration in Cleveland, someone had applied for a loan in my name. The application had been denied, but there it was, a hard inquiry from Lake Erie First Bank, submitted to an address I recognized with sickening clarity. Karen's clubhouse office. The fortress I was building had just revealed its true purpose. This wasn't just about one night of violence. This was about a pattern of fraud that went deeper than I'd imagined. And I had 6 weeks to expose it all. Word count: 1,000. File 3. The Lake Erie First Bank branch on Summit Street had the kind of hushed atmosphere that made you want to whisper. Evan and I sat across from Gerald Morrison, the loan officer whose name appeared on the denied application. He was studying the credit report I'd printed, his face cycling through expressions I recognized. Confusion, concern, and finally comprehension. This application, he said slowly, was submitted in person. I remember because it was unusual. Most people apply online these days. Do you remember who submitted it? I kept my voice level, professional. The recording app on my phone was running. Legally, since Ohio was a one-party consent state. Morrison glanced at his computer screen. Can't disclose, but I can tell you that the signature on this application doesn't match the signature card we have on file for you from when you opened your checking account 6 years ago. My pulse quickened. Can you provide documentation of that discrepancy? I'll need to involve our fraud department. He picked up his desk phone. This is serious. While Morrison made calls, I studied the loan application he'd printed for me. $60,000. Same amount Karen had tried to get me to co-sign for. The stated purpose: community center improvements and event enhancements. The employer listed was Copperline Data Works, but the salary was inflated by 30%. And there at the bottom was my signature, except it wasn't. I pulled out my phone, opening the photos from my old apartment lease. Evan, look at this. Side by side, the forgery was obvious. Someone had scanned my signature from that 2018 lease agreement and digitally placed it on the loan application, but they'd been sloppy. The resolution was different, the ink color slightly off, and most damning, they'd included part of the lease's printed text in the scan. Jesus, Laura, Evan zoomed in on the image. This is identity theft. This is evidence. I corrected. Morrison returned with Sheila Patterson from the fraud department, a woman who looked like she could audit your soul and find discrepancies. She examined everything with the intensity of a forensic investigator. We'll need to file a suspicious activity report, Patterson said. This goes to federal databases, FinCEN, FBI Financial Crimes Division. Are you prepared for that level of investigation? I'm counting on it. She nodded approvingly. We'll provide certified copies of everything. The application, our signature analysis, the digital metadata from the scanned documents. The timestamps show the application was created on July 15th at 2:47 p.m. I checked my work calendar. I was in Cleveland that entire week. I have hotel receipts, client meetings, everything. Good. We'll also flag your accounts for additional security. Anyone trying to access your information will trigger our fraud alerts. Patterson slid a business card across the table. This is my direct line. Any suspicious activity, any questions, you call me. Back in the car, Evan was quiet until we hit the highway. Karen's going to know you're on to her. Let her know. I adjusted the ice pack on my shoulder. I want her sweating. We spent the afternoon building the timeline. The loan application was submitted 3 months ago, rejected within a week. 2 months later, Karen started pressuring me about community obligations. 1 month ago, the threatening emails escalated. 3 nights ago, When I refused to sign her new waiver, she resorted to violence. She's desperate, Evan said. The fraud didn't work, so she tried coercion. When that failed, she showed her true face. I pulled up my banking apps. But here's what's interesting. Look at the HOA escrow account. I'd been added as a board observer years ago, which gave me view-only access. The pattern was clear. Deposits from resident fines that barely covered maintenance, withdrawals that coincided with Karen's catering quotes, and 3 large transfers to someone named Brittany Whitaker. The bride, Evan said. She's financing her daughter's wedding with money she doesn't have, which explains why she needs my credit. I screenshot everything. The venue requires a deposit. The catering, the photographer, the band all wanting payment up front. She's underwater and drowning. My phone buzzed. Unknown number, but I recognized the area code. I answered on speaker. You little, Karen's voice was slurred. Afternoon wine drunk. The bank just called. You're trying to ruin me.
I'm documenting fraud.
I said calmly. There's a difference. I'll sue you for defamation. Karen, I interrupted. You're violating the protective order by calling me. This conversation is being recorded. Please continue threatening me. My lawyer will find it helpful. The line went dead. You don't have a lawyer yet, Evan pointed out. She doesn't know that. We drove to the county courthouse next. The protective order had been granted that morning. Temporary, pending a full hearing. The clerk handed me certified copies, explaining that Karen would be served within 48 hours. Once she's served, any contact with you is a criminal violation, she said. Keep 1 copy with you at all times. Give copies to your employer, your apartment complex, anywhere you regularly go. I thought about the wedding invitations still sitting on my coffee table. What about events where we're both invited guests? The clerk raised an eyebrow. She has to maintain at least 100 feet distance. If she can't do that, she needs to leave. Her obligation, not yours. Perfect. That evening, I sat at my dining table with everything spread before me like battle plans. Police reports, medical records, bank fraud documentation, protective orders. Each document was a brick in the wall I was building around the truth. My phone rang. Maria from the shelter. I heard about the bank situation, she said. Word travels in advocacy circles. Are you okay? I'm building a case. You're building something, she agreed. Just remember the goal is safety and justice, not revenge. I looked at the wedding RSVP still waiting to be mailed. What if they're the same thing? Then you make sure your evidence is airtight. Document everything. Stay within the law. And Laura, consider getting security cameras for your apartment, inside and out. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and started shopping for cameras. Small ones, discreet ones, the kind that uploaded directly to cloud storage that I controlled. Because in 5 weeks and 4 days, I was going to walk into that clubhouse wedding reception. And when I did, I wanted a record of every single thing that happened next. The fortress was taking shape. Now I needed to plan the siege. The neighbors were easier to find than I'd expected. Public records showed 6 units bordering the clubhouse, and the HOA directory filled in the rest. 3 days after the bank meeting, I was knocking on doors with a folder of documentation and a story to tell. I remember you, Mrs. Chun said, opening her door on the chain. The quiet one who always paid her dues on time. I need your help, I said simply. It's about the police calls. She studied me for a long moment, taking in my fading bruises and careful posture. Then she undid the chain. Come in. Her apartment was a mirror image of the clubhouse office, but where Karen's walls held President of the Year plaques, Mrs. Chun had photographs of grandchildren and watercolor landscapes. She served tea while I explained why I was there. 3 times I called 911, she said before I could even ask. 3 times in 2 years. Shouting, crashing, glass breaking, always on weekend nights, always when she'd been drinking. Did you keep records? She smiled, a sharp expression that reminded me we all had our ways of fighting back. I'm 72 years old, living alone. You think I don't document everything? From a filing cabinet that looked older than me, she pulled a notebook, handwritten entries, dated and timed. November 15th, 11:47 p.m. Karen W. Shouting obscenities. Male voice. No children present. December 23rd, 1:15 a.m. Glass breaking. Karen crying about money. Derek threatening consequences. January 8th, 10:30 p.m. Loud argument about special assessments. Karen slammed door so hard my pictures shook. The police never did anything. I said, your mother, wait, your president always said everything was fine by the time they arrived. Mrs. Chen's voice was carefully neutral, but I kept calling and I kept writing. Would you be willing to provide a statement for court? I'll do better than that. She picked up her phone. My grandson installed security apps for me. I have recordings. My hands stilled around my teacup. Audio recordings? The walls are thin. When someone's screaming next door, my phone picks it up. She scrolled through files. I started recording after the second incident for my own protection. You understand? In case things escalated. She played one from 6 weeks ago. Karen's voice, unmistakable even through the wall. Don't tell me what I can't afford. I'll get the money however I have to. Then Derek, quieter but clear. Please, Karen, the neighbors. Screw the neighbors. The recording ended with a slam that made the phone speaker crackle. I have 6 more. Mrs. Chen said. All adults. No children involved. Would these help? More than you know. I fought to keep my voice steady. Can I get copies? My grandson can email them. He's good with the computer things. She patted my hand. I should have done more.
I'm sorry.
You documented truth, I said. That's doing something. The other neighbors were equally helpful. The young couple in 4B had doorbell camera footage of Karen's golf cart swerving home drunk. The retired teacher in 2A had called 911 twice himself and saved the call reference numbers. Everyone had noticed. Everyone had worried. No one had known what to do. We thought about calling you. The teacher, Mr. Davidson, admitted, but we didn't want to overstep. I gave him my business card with my cell number written on the back. If anything happens, anything, you call me, day or night. My next stop was less pleasant. My former coworker Derek, who still worked at the IT consulting firm where I'd been employed before Copperline, had been there the day Karen showed up. Man, that was wild, Derek said over coffee at a shop near the old office. Your HOA president just walked in like she owned the place, demanding to see you. When reception said you didn't work there anymore, she got aggressive. Define aggressive. Started yelling about ungrateful residents. How you were costing the community money. Security had to escort her out. Derek pulled out his phone. Actually, hang on. Lisa from HR sent an email about updating security protocols after that. I might still have it. He scrolled through his messages, then forwarded me an email dated 8 months ago. Subject line: Security incident, unauthorized visitor. The body detailed how a woman identifying herself as Karen Whitaker had attempted to access the secure office area, became verbally abusive when denied, and threatened to make everyone sorry if they didn't produce her problem resident. HR kept the security footage for their files. Derek added, in case she came back. Can you find out if they still have it? I'll ask. Lisa takes workplace safety seriously after that incident. She started a whole database of potentially dangerous individuals. He paused. I'm sorry you're dealing with this, Laura. Nobody deserves that kind of harassment. That evening, I met with Patricia Kowalski, an attorney who specialized in domestic violence and fraud cases. Her office was in a converted Victorian near downtown Pinewood. All dark wood and legal books that smelled like justice. "You've done exceptional prep work," she said, reviewing my documentation. "Most clients come in with feelings. You've come in with evidence. I work in data systems. Evidence is what I do." "Good. Now, let me tell you what Karen's attorney will do." She leaned back in her leather chair. "They'll claim this is a neighbor dispute over dues. They'll say you're vindictive because of past fines. They'll paint you as unstable, possibly lying about the assault to gain leverage in a financial disagreement. Which is why I have third-party witnesses, medical documentation, and a paper trail showing fraud." "Exactly. But here's what concerns me. This wedding reception. You have a protective order that requires her to stay 100 feet away. You're planning to attend an event where she'll be present. Her attorney will claim you're stalking her." I slid the wedding invitation across her desk. "I was invited. I have every right to attend. If she can't maintain the legally required distance at her own event, that's her problem." Patricia studied me over her glasses. "You're planning something?" "I'm planning to attend a wedding reception with all my documentation properly organized. And if certain information becomes public during the celebration, well, sometimes the truth has its own timeline. Stay within the law," she warned. "Document everything. And Laura, make sure whatever you're planning doesn't give her ammunition to use against you. The beauty of truth," I said, "is that it's its own best defense." She smiled then, sharp and appreciative. "I'll file the civil suit tomorrow. Assault, battery, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and identity theft. I'll seek damages and make the protective order permanent. The criminal charges from the prosecutor's office should follow within a week. How long until she's served for the civil suit? Within 72 hours. She made a note. I'll instruct the process server to try her clubhouse office first. Public humiliation can be remarkably motivating for settlement discussions. As I left her office, my phone buzzed with an email from Derek. Lisa from HR had not only kept the security footage, but had enhanced it with their new system. The video clearly showed Karen's face, her aggressive posture, and most importantly, her shoving past the receptionist, technically assault in a workplace environment. Another brick in the wall, another truth documented. For weeks until the wedding, my fortress of evidence was nearly complete. Now I needed to plan how to deploy it for maximum impact. Because Karen Whitaker thought she'd won with her binder. She was about to learn that, in the digital age, the pen wasn't just mightier than the sword. It was a weapon of mass destruction when wielded with precision. The microsite took 3 nights to build. Clean code, encrypted hosting, anonymous domain registration through a privacy service in Panama. I named it truthaboutpinewoodhoa.com. Simple, searchable, and devastating. The landing page was stark, a countdown timer to October 15th. And below it, a single question. How well do you really know the president of your HOA? Behind password protection lay the evidence archive. Police reports with case numbers, bank fraud documentation with official seals, medical photographs time-stamped and authenticated, the security footage from Derek's old office, Mrs. Chen's audio recordings transcribed with timestamps, every piece of evidence cataloged, indexed, and cross-referenced. But the masterpiece was the timeline visualization, an interactive chart showing how Karen's fraud attempts escalated to violence. Each point was clickable, expanding to show supporting documentation. Hovering over dates revealed corroborating evidence. It was the kind of data presentation I'd use for corporate clients, except this client was justice. "This is comprehensive," Evan said, testing the site on his laptop. "But how do you get people to see it?" I held up the RSVP card. "QR codes are wonderful things. Using microprinting techniques I'd learned from anti-counterfeiting webinars, I embedded a QR code in the decorative border of my reply card. To the naked eye, it looked like an elegant pattern. Scanned with a phone, it led to a landing page that looked like a dietary restriction form until you scrolled down and found the link. Important information about your hostess. The technical setup included visitor tracking, IP addresses, timestamps, device information not to spy, but to document who knew what when. If Karen claimed ignorance about the fraud, I'd have proof that her business partners, wedding guests, and potential creditors had accessed the truth. You're not just exposing her, Evan realized. You're creating a witness list. Every click is a potential testimonial, I confirmed. When someone accesses evidence of fraud and continues doing business with her, they become complicit. My phone rang. Patricia, my lawyer. She's been served, she said. Both the civil suit and the enhanced protective order. She didn't take it well. Define not well. The process server had to call police. Karen threw the papers and attempted to grab the server. It's on body cam. I'm adding assault of a process server to our complaint. How does that affect the criminal case? The prosecutor was already moving forward with battery charges from your assault. This shows pattern of violence. They're expediting. She paused. Laura, she's going to be desperate now. Please be careful. That night, I installed the 4th security camera in my apartment, covering the last blind spot. The system uploaded to 3 different cloud services with motion-triggered alerts to my phone, Evan's phone, and a security monitoring service. Paranoid? Maybe. Alive? Definitely. The next morning brought an expected call. My neighbor, Karen's longtime enabler, called. We need to talk, she said, her voice flat. Not at my house. Somewhere public. We met at a diner on the edge of town. The kind where coffee came in white mugs and conversations stayed private. She looked older, grayer, like the past week had aged her 5 years. I placed a folder on the table between us. Before you say anything, look at this. Inside were copies of the fraudulent loan application, highlighting the address where denial letters were sent, her clubhouse office, bank records showing she'd signed for the certified mail, the date circled in red. You knew, I said quietly. You knew she was using my identity, and you said nothing. She stared at the papers, hands wrapped around her coffee mug. She said she was going to pay it back, that it was just temporary to get through the wedding expenses. Identity theft isn't temporary. Federal charges aren't temporary. You're being dramatic. I'm being factual. I pulled out my phone, showing her the timeline I'd built. 3 months ago, fraud attempt. 2 months ago, escalating threats. 3 nights ago, assault. What comes after assault? What's the next escalation? Her hands trembled. She's not a bad woman. She has pressure. The wedding. Her image. Her image that hasn't been honest in 3 years. The wedding she can't afford. The pressure she created. I leaned forward. I need you to sign an affidavit confirming you received mail from Lake Erie First Bank addressed to me at the clubhouse. I can't do that. Then you're choosing her over your neighborhood again. That's not fair. Fair? I pulled up my shirt sleeve, showing the still yellowing bruise. Was this fair? Was standing in my driveway telling me I brought this on myself fair? She flinched. I was scared. Of what? Of her or of admitting you've been enabling her? Silence stretched between us. Finally, she pushed the folder back across the table. I can't testify against my president. You don't have to testify against her. Just confirm you received mail. That's all. I kept my voice level. Recording app running. One signature confirming a fact. Not interpretation. Not opinion. Just acknowledging you received mail from a bank. If I do this, she'll leave me alone. If you don't do this, you'll lose your community forever. She looked at me then, really looked, And I saw her make the calculation every enabler makes. Immediate comfort versus long-term consequence. Karen's rage versus my absence. The devil she knew versus the loneliness she feared. I need time to think, she said finally. The hearing is in 3 weeks. Decide before then. As we left, she stopped at the door. That wedding invitation. You're not really going, are you? I RSVP'd. Yes. It would be rude not to attend. Laura, please don't make a scene. Brittany doesn't deserve. Brittany deserves to know who's paying for her wedding, with whose money, at whose expense. I met her eyes. Every guest deserves to know who they're celebrating. That afternoon, I made another strategic move. I called the wedding venue the Community Clubhouse on Sandusky Bay. Hi, I'm Laura Bennett. I'll be attending the Whitaker wedding reception on October 15th. I wanted to confirm your security policies. The event coordinator was professionally cheerful. Of course, we have standard event security. Is there a specific concern? I have a protective order against one of the hosts. I need to ensure your staff is aware and can maintain the legally required distance. The cheer evaporated. A protective order against MS. Whitaker, I'll forward the documentation. Your venue needs to ensure compliance with the court order, or you could face liability issues. I'll need to speak with management. Please do. I'd hate for legal complications to affect your business. Within hours, I received a call from the venue's legal department. They were reviewing the situation and would ensure all legal requirements were met. Translation: they were panicking about liability and probably Googling their insurance coverage. Another domino positioned, another pressure point established. That night, I put the finishing touches on my microsite. The password for the evidence archive was simple. October 15 truth, easy to remember, easy to share, impossible to forget once seen. The QR code was embedded. The site was live. The evidence was archived. Now I just had to mail the RSVP card and wait for curiosity to do its work. Because in the digital age, secrets had a way of spreading like wildfire, and I just lit the match. The call came at 3 a.m., 2 weeks before the wedding. Not my neighbor's number, but I recognized the breathing before she spoke. She found the lawyer's papers in my drawer. She whispered, "She's drunk, destroying things. I'm locked in the bathroom. Call 911. I said, already pulling on clothes. Now, I can't. She'll neighbor. Call 911. I'm recording this call. If you don't, I will. The line went dead. I called emergency services myself, reporting a domestic disturbance at the clubhouse address. Then I called Patricia, waking her from sleep. Document everything, she said immediately. But do not go there. Your protective order. I know. I'm going to the police station instead. By dawn, I had the full picture. Karen had been arrested for drunk and disorderly, destruction of property, and violating the protective order. She'd been caught on body cam screaming about me, threatening what she'd do when she found me. My neighbor had finally given her statement, not about the fraud, but about that night. She'd found my copy of the loan documents in her drawer and confronted her. She's ready to sign the affidavit. Detective Torres told me over coffee in the station break room about receiving the bank mail. She says she'll testify if needed. What changed her mind? She smashed her mother's china, the set she'd been saving for 40 years. Torres shrugged. Sometimes it's the small things that break the spell. I met my neighbor that afternoon at Patricia's office. She looked hollow, exhausted, but there was something new in her eyes, resolve maybe, or just exhaustion with pretending. I brought these, she said, setting a box on the conference table from her office. I thought they might help. Inside were bank statements, loan applications, business documents, a paper trail of Karen's failing community projects, and increasingly desperate attempts to stay afloat. But the prize was at the bottom. A notebook where she'd practiced my signature. Pages of attempts. Getting closer with each try. She said it was for emergencies. My neighbor said quietly, in case you were traveling and she needed to handle business. Patricia photographed every page. This is evidence of premeditation. She didn't just forge your signature once. She practiced until she could do it convincingly. My neighbor signed the affidavit with a steady hand. Then she surprised me. There's more, she said. The clubhouse venue called yesterday. They're threatening to cancel unless the remaining balance is paid. Karen wired them money from an account I didn't know existed. Which account? Patricia leaned forward. Something called Whitaker Community Services, but I handle all our finances. That account isn't ours. I felt the pieces clicking together. She opened a business account using my information. We'll need to subpoena those records immediately, Patricia said. This is escalating from identity theft to full-scale fraud. My neighbor looked at me then, really looked at me. I'm sorry for all of it, for not protecting the neighborhood, for choosing comfort over truth. I don't need apologies, I said. I need you to tell the truth in court under oath. I will. That evening, the microsite analytics showed interesting patterns. 12 unique visitors in the past week. All from the Pinewood area. 3 from Karen's supposed business partners. 1 from the wedding venue's IP address. 2 from the catering company. The QR code was working. People were curious. But the most interesting visit came from someone who spent 47 minutes reviewing every piece of evidence, downloading documents, and taking screenshots. The IP traced back to Brittany Whitaker's apartment complex. The bride knew. My phone rang. Unknown number. Is this Laura Bennett? Young woman's voice. Nervous. Yes. This is Brittany. Brittany Whitaker. Well, soon to be Whitaker Morrison. She laughed. Brittle. I saw your website. And is it true? All of it? Every document is authenticated. Every piece of evidence is real. Silence. Then she said the money for our wedding came from a business deal. Said she'd been saving for years to give me the perfect day. Check the dates on those bank fraud attempts. Compare them to your vendor payment schedules. Oh God. Her voice cracked. My mom's going to be devastated. She thinks Karen hung the moon. What are you going to do? I don't know. The wedding is in 2 weeks. Everything's paid for with stolen money. Apparently my fiancé's family is flying in from Seattle. I can't just, she stopped. Can I ask you something? Go ahead. Are you really planning to come to the wedding? I RSVP'd. Yes. Even with everything, even knowing it'll cause a scene. Brittany, your mother assaulted me. She tried to steal my identity. She's used my credit to pay for your wedding. You think I'm the one causing a scene? Another silence. Then you're right. God, you're right. I've been so focused on the perfect wedding that I ignored everything, all the signs, the way she treats the neighbors, the drinking, the anger. You have 2 weeks to decide what kind of person you want to be. The kind who enables abuse for convenience, or the kind who stands up for what's right. What would you do in my place? I'd return every gift bought with stolen money. I'd tell the truth to every guest, and I'd have my wedding somewhere that didn't require fraud to finance. That's easy for you to say. You're not the one whose entire future, my future, I laughed, sharp and bitter. Your mother tried to destroy my future, my credit, my safety, my relationship with my neighborhood. Don't talk to me about futures.
I'm sorry.
You're right. I need time to think. Think fast. In 2 weeks, everything goes public. Whether that's at your reception or in a courtroom depends on what happens next. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment surrounded by security cameras and legal documents and felt the weight of what was coming. The analytics showed more visits. Word was spreading. The wedding vendors were talking. Karen's business associates were asking questions. My phone buzzed. Text from Evan. Neighbor called me. She's leaving the board. Staying with her sister in Detroit for now. One more domino fallen. One more truth acknowledged. I looked at the wedding invitation now pinned to my bulletin board like evidence. 2 weeks until October 15th. 2 weeks until every secret was exposed. Every lie revealed. Every stolen dollar accounted for. The fortress was built. The evidence was public. The allies were choosing sides. Now came the hardest part. Waiting for the bomb to explode. The preliminary hearing was set for October 8th. 1 week before the wedding. Patricia had warned me it would be brutal. Karen had hired Thomas Brennan, a defense attorney known for turning victims into villains. The courtroom smelled like old wood and disappointment. I sat with Patricia at the plaintiff's table, my evidence binders arranged like armor across the aisle. Karen looked smaller than I remembered, her wedding-ready tan unable to hide the bloat from 2 weeks of rage drinking. Your Honor, Brennan began, his voice carrying that particular blend of condescension and fake concern that expensive lawyers perfected. This is clearly a neighbor dispute that's been blown out of proportion. Ms. Bennett is obviously bitter about her HOA fines and is using the legal system to harass my client before her daughter's wedding. Patricia stood. Your Honor, we have documented evidence of assault, battery, and systematic identity theft. This isn't about neighbor dynamics. It's about criminal behavior. Judge Martinez, a woman who looked like she'd heard every excuse ever invented, leafed through the preliminary filings. Mr. Brennan, I see hospital records, police reports, and banking fraud documentation. Are you suggesting these are fabricated? Not fabricated, Your Honor, but perhaps misinterpreted. My client admits to a heated neighbor discussion, during which she struck Ms. Bennett with a rule book. The judge interrupted. An unfortunate gesture during an emotional moment? She was reaching for. Judge Martinez's voice could have frozen fire. I've reviewed the neighbors' 911 calls. 3 separate households reported sounds of violence. That's not a gesture, counselor. That's a pattern. Patricia stepped forward. Your Honor, we'd like to submit additional evidence that speaks to premeditation. She handed the bailiff a thumb drive. Security footage from Ms. Bennett's former workplace showing Ms. Whitaker attempting to access her 8 months ago, becoming violent when refused. The courtroom's wall monitor flickered to life. There was Karen, clear as day, shoving past the receptionist, screaming about ungrateful residents and money owed. The timestamp showed 2:17 p.m. On a Tuesday, middle of a workday, stone sober, purely furious. Karen shifted in her seat. Brennan's expression tightened. Furthermore, Patricia continued, we have doorbell camera footage from the night of the assault. The next video was grainy but damning. Mrs. Chen's doorbell camera had caught part of the driveway. You could see Karen's golf cart swerving into the drive at 10:47 p.m. You could see her stumble out holding what was clearly a binder. And at 10:58 p.m., you could see me running to my car, holding my shoulder, movement screaming injury. Your Honor, Brennan tried again. My client has deep roots in this community. She's the HOA president, a soon-to-be mother of the bride, paying for the wedding with fraudulently obtained funds. Patricia interrupted. We have evidence that Ms. Whitaker attempted to secure loans using Ms. Bennett's identity, and when that failed, she escalated to physical violence to coerce her cooperation. Objection. This is a hearing, Mr. Brennan, not a trial. I'll allow it. Judge Martinez nodded to Patricia. Continue. Patricia pulled up the bank's fraud report on the monitor, the forged signature, the practice pages from Karen's notebook, the timeline showing how each failed fraud attempt preceded an escalation in threats. Your Honor, this isn't just assault. It's a pattern of escalating criminal behavior that culminated in violence when Ms. Bennett refused to be victimized further. I watched Karen's face as each piece of evidence displayed. The tan was fading to gray. Her hands shook. When the audio from Mrs. Chun played, her voice screaming about getting the money. However, I have to. She closed her eyes. Ms. Brennan, Judge Martinez said, "Does your client have any explanation for this documented pattern?" Brennan whispered urgently with Karen, then stood. "Your Honor, my client acknowledges some financial pressure related to family obligations. Perhaps some errors in judgment." Errors in judgment? The judge's eyebrows climbed. Forgery is not an error in judgment. Assault is not an error in judgment. These are crimes. Counselor. "If I may, Your Honor," I said, standing despite Patricia's hand on my arm. "May I address the court?" Judge Martinez studied me. "This is irregular, but given you're the victim, proceed briefly." I pulled out my phone, showing it to the bailiff first, then holding it up. "This is a tracking app showing every visit to a website I created to document this abuse. In the past week, it's been accessed by 12 of Ms. Whitaker's business associates, 6 wedding vendors, and 3 potential creditors. They've all seen the evidence. They all know what she is." "Objection," Brennan shouted. "This is harassment. This is transparency." I continued. "Every person considering a business deal with Ms. Whitaker deserves to know they're dealing with someone who commits fraud. Every wedding guest deserves to know their gift is celebrating a woman who beats neighbors. Your Honor, she's trying to ruin. She ruined herself." I looked directly at Karen for the first time. "I just documented it." Judge Martinez raised a hand for silence. "I've seen enough. The temporary protective order is extended indefinitely. Ms. Whitaker is to have no contact with Ms. Bennett directly or indirectly. She is not to come within 500 feet. 500, Brennan objected. "The wedding venue is only then Ms. Whitaker will need to make alternative arrangements." The judge's smile was sharp. "Furthermore, given the evidence of identity theft and fraud, I'm forwarding this case to the prosecutor's office with a recommendation for immediate criminal charges." She turned to Karen. "Ms. Whitaker, you're currently out on bail from your arrest 2 weeks ago. Consider yourself fortunate I'm not revoking that bail right now. One violation of this order, one phone call, one text, one approach at any location, including the wedding venue, and you'll be in custody. Am I clear?" Karen mumbled something. "I didn't hear you." "Yes, Your Honor." "Good." Court is adjourned. As people filed out, Brennan grabbed Karen's arm, hissing about appeals and civil suits. Patricia packed our evidence with satisfied efficiency. "That went better than expected," she said. 500 feet effectively bans her from her own reception if you're there. "I know. Laura." She studied me. "What are you planning?" "I'm planning to attend a wedding reception I was invited to with all legal protections in place." In the hallway, my neighbor waited. She testified earlier about finding the practice signature pages, her voice steady despite Karen's glares. Now she approached carefully, like I might bolt. "The prosecutor wants to meet with me tomorrow," she said. "About the fraud charges. Evan's coming with me." "Good." "Laura, about the wedding." "What about it?" "Brittany called me. She's thinking of postponing. The venue's threatening to cancel anyway because of the protective order situation. That's her choice to make." My neighbor touched my arm gently. "You won. She's facing criminal charges. The truth is out. Do you really need to?" "Yes." Pulled away. "I need to see this through. All the way through." She nodded slowly. "I understand. Just be careful. Desperate women do desperate things." As she walked away, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. But I recognized Brittany's voice. "The wedding's still on," she said without preamble. "October 15th. But Karen won't be there. The restraining order. The venue's lawyers. She can't come."
I'm sorry.
I said, meaning it. You shouldn't have to choose. No, I should have chosen long ago. Between right and wrong. Between truth and comfort. She laughed bitterly. I'm keeping the wedding because everything's paid for and I won't get deposits back. But I'm adding something to the program. A moment of truth. I'm calling it. What kind of truth? The kind that sets everyone free. Will you still come? I RSVP'd. Yes. Good. Bring your evidence, all of it. I want everyone to know exactly who they were celebrating. And Laura, thank you for forcing me to see what I was choosing to ignore. After she hung up, I sat in my car in the courthouse parking lot, watching the October sky threaten rain. 1 week until the wedding. 1 week until every secret was laid bare in front of everyone who'd enabled Karen's behavior through silence or support. The legal victory was just the beginning. The real reckoning would come when the truth was served alongside wedding cake. When evidence was presented with champagne toasts. When justice wore a cocktail dress and comfortable heels. 1 more week. Then the fortress I'd built would become a spotlight, and everyone would see what they'd been pretending not to know. October 15th arrived with the kind of crisp autumn weather that wedding photographers dream about. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, carefully covering the last yellowish remains of bruising with concealer. My dress was midnight blue, professional but elegant, the kind of outfit that said successful professional rather than victim seeking revenge. Evan waited in my living room, adjusting his tie. You sure about this? The RSVP said 2 guests. I picked up my clutch, specially chosen for its size, large enough to hold my phone, the panic button from the shelter, and a USB drive containing every piece of evidence. Besides, I need a witness. The renovated clubhouse on Sandusky Bay looked like something from a magazine. Exposed brick wrapped in fairy lights, industrial windows reflecting the lake, food trucks arranged like an upscale festival. Brittany had managed to create beauty despite the ugly circumstances of its funding. We arrived deliberately late, after the ceremony but before dinner. The cocktail hour was in full swing. Guests mingling with drinks and appetizers, unaware of the storm about to break. Laura, a man in his 50s, approached. Jim Morrison, Brittany's father. Brittany said you might come. I wanted to thank you for opening our eyes. I just documented the truth. The truth we all should have seen. He glanced around, lowering his voice. Karen's not here, obviously. She's been calling all morning, threatening lawsuits, demanding refunds from vendors. The police have been notified. Is Brittany okay? She's stronger than I gave her credit for. She has something planned for the reception. Said you'd understand. The cocktail hour extended longer than usual, and I understood why when I saw the AV team setting up additional equipment, screens that hadn't been there for the ceremony, a laptop being connected to the sound system. Brittany was preparing for her moment of truth. I recognized several faces in the crowd. Karen's supposed business partners, men who'd accessed my website, downloaded evidence, and still chose to associate with her. They avoided eye contact, clustering near the bar like guilt had a gravitational pull. Laura Bennett, a young man with an event staff badge, approached. Ms. Whitaker, sorry, Mrs. Morrison now asked me to give you this. He handed me a wireless microphone for later. The reception hall was stunning. Round tables with centerpieces of white roses and eucalyptus. Soft lighting that made everyone look younger. A band preparing for the celebration. If you didn't know the story, it looked like the perfect wedding. My neighbor sat at a table near the back, wearing the mother of the groom dress she'd bought months ago. She looked older, fragile, but there was something different in her posture, pride maybe, or just relief at no longer carrying secrets. Dinner was served, locally sourced, farm to table, the kind of meal Karen would have bragged about paying for. I picked at my salmon, watching Brittany work the room in her designer gown, playing the perfect bride while preparing to detonate her perfect day. Then, Between the main course and dessert, she took the microphone. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice steady, "for celebrating this new chapter with Michael and me. But before we continue the celebration, I need to share something important about truth, about choices, about the cost of silence." The room quieted. Even the servers stopped moving. "Many of you know my mother. Karen Whitaker isn't here tonight. What you might not know is why." She clicked a remote and the screens came to life. This is why. The first image was the police report. Assault charges. Case number visible. Date stamped. 6 weeks ago. Karen Whitaker assaulted my neighbor Laura Bennett because she refused to co-sign fraudulent loans. Click. Bank documents appeared. Loans she needed to pay for this wedding. Gasps rippled through the room. Someone dropped a glass. But it goes deeper. Click. The security footage from Derek's office played silently. This is Karen 8 months ago attempting to force her way into Laura's former workplace, becoming violent when refused access. "This is inappropriate." One of Karen's business partners stood up. "This is a wedding. This is the truth. Mr. Garrison." Brittany's voice hardened. "The same truth you saw when you accessed Laura's website last week. The same truth you chose to ignore because Karen owed you money." The man sat down, face flushed. Click. The audio from Mrs. Chin played. Karen's voice filling the reception hall. "I'll get the money however I have to. Every vendor here." Brittany continued. "Every flower, every appetizer, every moment of beauty was paid for with money Karen tried to steal using Laura's identity. When fraud didn't work, she resorted to violence." She turned to me. "Laura, would you join me?" I stood, taking the wireless microphone, walking to the front as 200 guests watched. The USB drive felt heavy in my clutch. I RSVP'd to this wedding reception, I said, my voice carrying clearly, because I believe in truth, in consequences, in the power of documentation to cut through denial and enable justice. I plugged the USB into the laptop. The screens changed to my timeline visualization. This is 6 years of escalation. Every threat documented, every fraud attempt recorded, every act of violence reported. I clicked through the evidence, letting data tell the story emotion couldn't convey. Karen Whitaker thought she could build a reputation on lies and intimidation. Today, that foundation crumbles. "You're ruining her wedding." A woman at table 3 stood up, Karen's sister. I recognized her. "This is cruel." "No," Brittany said firmly. "What's cruel is pretending abuse doesn't exist because acknowledging it is inconvenient. What's cruel is enabling a predator because confrontation is uncomfortable." She looked around the room, making eye contact with specific guests. "How many of you knew something was wrong, heard the rumors, saw the signs, and how many chose silence because it was easier?" The room was tomb quiet. Michael and I discussed canceling this wedding, but we decided to continue for one reason: to use this platform, this gathering of everyone who enabled Karen through action or inaction, to say no more. A server approached with a document on a silver tray. "Not dessert, legal papers. Mr. Garrison, Mr. Phelps, Mr. Romano." Brittany named Karen's business partners. "You've been served. Subpoenas for the criminal fraud case. Your downloads of evidence from Laura's website established knowledge of criminal activity. Your continued business dealings established complicity." The 3 men scrambled for exits, but uniformed officers were already at the doors. Not to arrest, just to ensure service of process. "This wedding reception," Brittany continued, tears streaming but voice steady, "is my apology to Laura, to my mother, to everyone Karen hurt while we looked away. And it's my promise, never again will I choose comfort over conscience." The band leader, clearly prepared, began playing not dancing music, but something softer, contemplative. Brittany hugged me, whispering thank you before returning to her new husband, who looked at her with pride and maybe a little awe. I returned to my seat as conversations erupted at every table. Some guests left immediately, unable to face their complicity. Others approached me with their own stories, business deals gone bad, threats they'd received, moments they'd witnessed but not reported. We have a unit outside. Detective Torres appeared at my elbow, dressed in civilian clothes but clearly on duty. In case she shows up, the protective order. She'll come, I said. She can't help herself. This kind of public humiliation, she'll need to respond. As if summoned, my phone lit up with an emergency alert from my apartment security system. Motion detected. Multiple cameras triggered. But I wasn't home. And Karen didn't know about the wedding's most important guest. The process server standing by with criminal indictments, waiting for a woman stupid enough to violate a protective order on camera. Let her come, I said, showing Torres the security feed. Every crime she commits just adds to the charges. The wedding reception continued, transformed from celebration to reckoning. And somewhere across town, Karen Whitaker was about to discover that breaking into my empty apartment was her final mistake. Because I hadn't just built a fortress of evidence, I'd built a trap. And she was about to walk right into it. The band had just started the traditional first dance when Detective Torres's phone buzzed. She stepped away to answer, her expression shifting from professional calm to sharp attention. I watched her nod, gesture to the uniformed officers by the door, then return to me. She's at your apartment, she said quietly. Broke a window to get in. Units are responding now. I pulled up my security app, showing her the live feed. For cameras captured Karen Whitaker stumbling through my living room, rage and alcohol making her clumsy. She was looking for something, throwing cushions, yanking open drawers, scattering papers I'd left strategically placed. What's she after? Torres asked. Evidence she thinks I have hidden. Physical documents she can destroy. I switched cameras. Everything important is digital, backed up in 3 different clouds. On screen, Karen found my desk. Rifling through folders I'd left labeled Whitaker fraud evidence and wedding exposure plan, decoys, all of them. Photocopies of public records. Nothing that couldn't be replaced. But she didn't know that. All units be advised. Torres spoke into her radio. Suspect is destroying what she believes is evidence. Let her continue. Document everything. Wait for my signal. Back on the dance floor, Brittany and Michael swayed to their song, pretending not to notice the police activity. But I saw her eyes tracking Torres. Saw the slight nod when their gazes met. She knew. She was ready. My phone rang. Patricia, my lawyer. Laura, where are you? At the wedding. Karen's at my apartment. Police are on scene. Perfect. I'm here with the process server and the prosecutor. We have the criminal indictments, fraud, identity theft, assault, and now breaking and entering. The moment she exits your apartment, she's done. Through the security feed, I watched Karen find my laptop, an old one I'd left as bait, loaded with harmless files labeled tantalizingly. She smashed it against my coffee table. The violence of someone who'd lost all control. Ladies and gentlemen, the band leader announced, the bride and groom invite you all to the dance floor, but half the guests were watching the screens, which still displayed the evidence slideshow on loop. The other half whispered among themselves. The party atmosphere transformed into something raw and real. Ms. Bennett, a man I didn't recognize, approached. I'm Nathan Wells from Wells and Associates. I've been doing business with Karen for 3 years. He pulled out his phone. I recorded our last conversation. She offered to cut me in on her new venture using other people's identities for loans. I thought she was joking until I saw your website. Send that to Detective Torres. I indicated her, and to the prosecutor. Every piece helps. More people approached. a caterer who'd been stiffed on past events, a contractor who'd been threatened when he demanded payment, two former board members who'd quit after Karen's violent outbursts, each one with a story, a recording, a document. The evidence mountain grew. Torres's radio crackled. Suspect is attempting to leave the premises. Should we let her exit? Torres commanded. Arrest on the street. All cameras rolling. I switched my phone to the exterior camera. Karen emerged through my broken window, carrying my smashed laptop and several folders. Her golf cart was parked crooked, one wheel on the lawn. She looked wild, desperate, exactly like the criminal she was. Now, Torres said through the tiny screen. We watched 4 police cars converge, officers with weapons drawn, Karen dropping evidence as she raised her hands. The process server stepping forward as handcuffs clicked, serving papers even as Miranda rights were read. Multiple felony charges. Torres announced to the room, no longer pretending this was a normal wedding, including violating a protective order, which makes everything else worse. Applause started somewhere, scattered at first, then growing. Not celebration exactly. More like relief. The exhale after holding your breath too long. Brittany took the microphone again. I know this isn't the wedding anyone expected, but maybe it's the wedding we needed. A moment where truth mattered more than appearance. Where courage defeated comfort. She looked directly at me. Laura, you gave me the strength to stop a cycle of enabling. You showed me that documentation isn't just data, it's defense. That evidence isn't just information, it's empowerment. Michael joined her, taking the mic. We're donating our honeymoon fund to the local domestic violence shelter because celebrating our love while ignoring others' pain isn't love at all. My phone buzzed with notifications. The website traffic exploding as wedding guests shared the link. Local news picking up the story. The prosecutor texting that with the new evidence Karen would likely face 15 to 20 years. Dance with me. Evan appeared at my elbow. You've earned a celebration. We joined the crowd on the dance floor, my blue dress swirling as we moved. Conversations continued. Not about centerpieces or honeymoon destinations, but about accountability, about the price of silence, about the power of truth supported by evidence. You did it, Evan said. You brought down a predator without throwing a single punch, just data and determination. And allies, I corrected, watching Brittany dance with her father, my neighbor sitting with Mrs. Chin, who'd somehow appeared, Detective Torres coordinating with her team. Truth needs witnesses. Evidence needs advocates. The music shifted to something faster, and suddenly everyone was dancing with the desperate joy of people who'd survived something terrible together. Karen's business partners had fled, but everyone else remained, choosing community over complicity. My phone lit up with a text from Patricia. She's in custody. Bail denied due to protective order violation. Trial date in 60 days. You won. I showed Evan the message. He grinned. So what now? This crusade is over. Now? I looked around the transformed reception at people exchanging numbers and promising to testify. At Brittany turning her ruins into revolution. Now we make sure it sticks. Every court date, every testimony, every parole hearing for the next 2 decades. The band announced Last Dance and Brittany insisted I join her and Michael. 3 of us swaying to something sweet and slow. The screen still cycling through evidence like the world's strangest wedding slideshow. Thank you, she whispered, for forcing me to see, for refusing to let me look away. Thank you, I replied, for choosing truth over tradition. As the song ended and lights came up, revealing mascara tears and relieved faces, I realized something. This wasn't the revenge I'd originally planned. It was better. Because revenge would have been destroying Karen in secret. This public reckoning, this community awakening, this transformation of a wedding into a watershed, this was justice. and justice served at a wedding reception with 200 witnesses, and a trending hashtag tasted better than any cake. The emergency hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. Monday, barely 36 hours after the wedding. I sat in the courtroom's front row, Patricia beside me, watching Karen shuffle in wearing Orange County Jail coveralls. Her wedding-ready tan looked sickly under fluorescent lights, her hands cuffed to a belly chain. Judge Martinez, the same who'd extended my protective order, reviewed the weekend's arrest reports with undisguised disgust. Breaking and entering, destruction of property, protective order violation, evidence tampering. The list grew with each page she turned. Ms. Whitaker, she finally said, you were explicitly warned that violating the protective order would result in immediate custody. Yet within 1 week, you broke into Ms. Bennett's residence while she was attending the wedding you were legally barred from. Brennan, her attorney, looked exhausted. Your Honor, my client was under extreme emotional duress. Counselor, your client's emotional state does not exempt her from following court orders. She turned to the prosecutor. What is the state requesting? Remand without bail. Your Honor, the defendant has shown complete disregard for court orders and poses a continuing threat to the victim. Additionally, we're filing enhanced charges given the protective order violation. Granted, the defendant is remanded to custody pending trial. The gavel came down with finality. As they led Karen away, she turned, trying to catch my eye, but I was already looking past her to the future where she was just a case number in the system. The criminal trial took place in December, delayed by Brennan's attempts at plea bargains that the prosecutor rejected. By then, the wedding story had become local legend, featured in news segments about innovative approaches to exposing abuse. I testified for 3 hours, walking the jury through each document, each timestamp, each piece of digital evidence. The security footage from my apartment played on loop. Karen breaking in, destroying what she thought was evidence, unaware she was creating more. Why didn't you just delete everything and move on? The prosecutor asked me, a planned question to address what the defense would raise. Because moving on without accountability isn't moving, it's enabling. Every person who stays silent about abuse becomes part of the system that perpetuates it. The defense tried to paint me as vindictive, but the evidence was overwhelming. Bank fraud documentation, medical records, police reports, audio recordings, business partners testifying about Karen's attempts to recruit them into identity theft schemes. Even my neighbor took the stand, voice steady as she detailed years of financial manipulation she'd discovered after leaving the board. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. Sentence: 18 years with possibility of parole after 12. As the verdict was read, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not satisfaction, but release, like finally exhaling after holding my breath for months. Outside the courthouse, Brittany waited with Michael and a small crowd of supporters. Some I recognized from the wedding. Others were strangers who'd followed the case. We started a foundation, Brittany announced, handing me documentation, the Truth Through Evidence Fund. It helps HOA abuse survivors document their cases and access legal support. The paperwork showed significant seed funding, all the money that would have gone to Karen's defense, redirected by my neighbor to support victims instead of enabling perpetrators. The clubhouse venue is donating space for our fundraisers, Michael added. Turns out hosting a reception that exposed a predator is great PR for supporting justice initiatives. 3 months later, I stood in that same venue speaking to a crowd of survivors, advocates, and allies at the foundation's launch event. The walls that had once displayed evidence of abuse now showed success stories, cases built with documentation, prosecutions secured with evidence, lives rebuilt with support. Evidence is protection, I told the audience. Documentation is defense, and silence is complicity we can no longer afford. My apartment had been repaired. Security upgraded again, though I rarely worried about it anymore. Karen was serving her time, her appeals exhausted. Her business partners had pleaded guilty to lesser charges, turning state's evidence in exchange for probation. The network of enablers had crumbled, replaced by a network of advocates. Evan helped run the foundation's technical side, building secure platforms for evidence storage. My neighbor volunteered with intake, her own journey from enabler to advocate making her uniquely qualified to help others recognize the patterns. Even Mrs. Chen got involved, teaching a workshop on neighborly documentation, how to legally record evidence that might help someone else escape abuse. You changed everything, she told me after one session. Not with violence, but with vigilance. The wedding industry took notice too. Several venues began including protective order protocols in their contracts. Wedding planners created safety procedures for events where domestic violence might be a concern. The Whitaker-Morrison wedding became a case study in transforming celebration into accountability. On the one-year anniversary of the wedding, Brittany and Michael renewed their vows. A small ceremony focused on their love rather than performance. I attended as a friend this time. No evidence folders needed. That first wedding was about exposing truth. Brittany said in her vows. This one is about living it. As I write this, it's been 2 years since that October night when Karen's violence sparked my documentation crusade. The bruises are long gone, but the lessons remain. Truth without evidence is just accusation. Evidence without action is just information. Action without support is just isolation. But together they're justice. My credit is fully restored. The fraudulent attempts actually led to stronger protections. My career thrived. Turns out companies value employees who understand the importance of documentation and security. The fortress I built to protect myself became a blueprint others could follow. Sometimes I drive past the clubhouse venue, see other weddings in progress, and wonder if those celebrations hide secrets too. But then I remember we've built systems now, resources, networks. The next person facing what I faced won't have to build their fortress alone. They'll have the truth through evidence fund. They'll have protocols and procedures. They'll have a community that chose courage over comfort, documentation over denial. And somewhere in a federal prison, Karen Whitaker has 16 more years to think about how her binder against my shoulder started an avalanche she never saw coming. An avalanche of paper and pixels, timestamps and testimonies, evidence and allies. She thought violence was power. She was wrong. Documentation is power. Truth is power. And community is unstoppable. The wedding invitation, that golden boss trigger for everything, sits framed in my office now. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your abuser. It's building something from the destruction they caused. Something stronger. Something lasting. Something that ensures the next Karen Whitaker faces justice before she can create the next Laura Bennett. And that's not revenge at all. That's revolution. Thank you for listening to this story. I'd love to hear where you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect and exchange thoughts about justice, documentation, and standing up against HOA abuse. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel, like this video, and hit the hype button to help more people discover these important narratives. Your support helps these stories reach those who need to hear them most.